Hi, I'm Chelsea. And what in the world do superheroes have to do with flowers?
Hi, I'm Gina, and I'm going to tell you all about a little girl from Atlanta who made her way into Italian-American history.
I'm Melissa, and I'm going to tell you about an unsung hero of DNA, Rosalind Franklin.
What does all this have to do with the word rose? Find out in this week's episode of History Bluffs. Welcome to History Bluffs. It's where truth is stranger than fiction. I want to welcome now your host. It's Chris.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of History Bluffs, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for listening on our podcast channel. And we are indeed going to find out, as our tech extraordinaire Adam said, whether truth is stranger than fiction. Tonight we have three historians, and each of them are going to regale us with stories inspired by the word rose. And appropriately enough and unplanned, we are all wearing the colors of roses on our shirts and blouses today, as you see. For those of you watching, and for those of you listening, you know that because I just said it. Adam, Adam, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. In fact, I'm going to make a rare appearance here just to prove I'm wearing it too. I've got a reddish hue going on. Just saying.
Okay. Breaking that fourth wall, Adam.
There it is. I'm here to break down walls of all kinds.
Breaking down walls. That's what we do here at History Bluffs. But what we also do is we tell stories. We tell the stories inspired by words that inspire stories from history. And as our show goes, we're going to meet our historians first, and then we'll explain the rules. So let us start with Chelsea. Hello, Chelsea. Welcome back to the show.
Hi there. And I'd just like to say, on Wednesdays, me and Chris, we were pink.
That's right. That's the way it happens to be. So Chelsea is one of our historians, and then we also have Gina. Hello, Gina. Welcome back to the show.
Hi. Hey, Chris. What's up?
Things are going well. And Melissa, welcome back to the show to you.
Hi, happy to be here.
Happy to be here. We're happy to have you. So, real quick question for each of you, and I'm going to kind of do this kind of rapid fire style. I'm going to ask each of you. So, one of a song, when I heard the word rose, one of the first things that popped in my head was the Guns N' Roses song, "Every Rose Has a Thorn."
That's a good one.
Each of you think, if you will, for a second, about something in either your life or the world in general that is typically perceived as a beautiful thing, but also has a little bit of a thorn attached to it. And I'm going to go in the order that we came into the show. So Chelsea, what would be something like that for you? A rose that has a thorn.
Rose that has a thorn. So I have a puppy. Her name's Sunday, and I love her so much. She makes me super happy. But puppies are a lot. So.
That's true.
Well said, and true words.
It can be a lot sometimes. So there are some thorns, but she's
nice. That is true indeed. Gina, what about you?
Well, I think the first thing that when you said song, a song that popped into my mind is that really pretty Bette Midler song, "Some Say Love."
Yes.
That one.
Yeah.
And it's called "The Rose," and it's a really beautiful song, and it's a lot of metaphors for love and thorns and the happy parts and the bad parts and the sad parts. So that song is beautiful, and it would give me chills to listen to it. But then every time she ended it, I would just cry. Like, I feel like that's a beautiful song. It's like it's got the beauty and the beauty, and your heart is in it. And then all of a sudden you're crying, and it's like, pretty thorn. It was perfect.
Wow, very nice. All right. And Melissa, what about you?
Okay, this is a weird one, but for some reason when you were explaining it, I thought of Pop Rocks, because on one hand, Pop Rocks, like the first little taste of it, it's like, oh, this is amazing, it's novel, it's new, and then when you do it too much, you're like, oh, this is awful. What's going on?
They don't stop popping. You're just like they're under your tongue. They're in the corners of your cheeks.
Yeah.
Melissa, you might be too young to remember, but there was a whole myth. There was this myth that, if you mix them with Pepsi, like if you drink Pepsi while you do them, your mouth would explode. Not Coke, but Pepsi. We were always too afraid to try it. Is anybody? Yeah, exactly.
Pepsi had nothing to do with that.
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's what they say. Do me.
Oh, Adam, what about you, Adam?
Well, good question, Chris. I'm glad you asked. I was gonna say, and I'm gonna stick with the Rose theme. Stephen King's Dark Tower series of novels is an amazing story. That is the rose part of it. And in fact, the rose is in fact a symbol in the story through line. The thorns would be the fact that it comprises 7 novels of about 1,000 pages each, and it's going to take you literally years to read this thing. So that's my contribution.
All right. Well, thank you for that indeed. Now, speaking of rose, that is the topic of our show tonight. So each of our 3 historians were inspired by that word, have come up with stories to tell us. And here's the thing. The show is called History Bluffs, which means that 2 of those stories will be true. 1 is bluffing. Adam, let's put up the card to explain the rules of the show.
Let's do it. We have rules here. We're going to follow them. For those of you listening along, Chris is going to read them.
Yes. So rose is the topic, and each of our historians were inspired by that topic to come up with a story. 2 of our historians are telling true stories. Now, these true stories are factual, actual stories inspired by real events, real places, real people. And then 1 of our historians is bluffing. So their bluff story, their bluff story will be fictional. The fictional story could be based on, could be based around a true place or a true person, but the premise of the story is fictional. So, and we also ask that no audience help be involved, meaning that we ask people not to use any kind of search engine and debunk a story in any of the first 3 rounds. After all 3 rounds of stories, we will have an opportunity for guessing and determining which of the 3 historians we believe is the bluff. So with that, Adam, I'm going to ask you to put up the round tracker 9,000 above my head.
Oh man, let's do it. Let's reveal the technology.
And
for we have fashioned it.
We have fashioned it
out of raw bits and bytes.
And that's not just for the rose story. That happens to also always be pink, just FYI. But we are going to have 3 rounds. Each round gets successfully shorter. It's going to go 75 seconds in the first round, 60 seconds in the second round, and 45 seconds in the concluding round. So I'm going to switch places with Chelsea. Adam, if you would be so kind, let's start round number 1.
Let's do it. Let's go into round number 1.
All right, so Chelsea and I are going to switch spots. She's going to take the main box. I'm going to go up into the side panel. And Chelsea, when you see the sundial come up and you hear the boom, you will have 75 seconds for your opening round story.
Okay, so we're going to transport you all the way back to the 90s. So long ago. I know, it's crazy. So what do you think about when you hear about the 90s? Blockbuster movies, right? Movies were huge. I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire, Ghost, Sister Act, There's Something About Mary. And at the time, we didn't have this like Marvel cinematic universe, but we did have Batman Forever. It was huge. And it was a star-studded cast, Batman Forever. You had Val Kilmer as Batman, Tommy Lee Jones was Two-Face, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, one of his most iconic roles. Nicole Kidman was in this, Chris O'Donnell as Robin, Drew Barrymore. And something I found out recently is that it was produced by Tim Burton, which was news to me, but there it is. So it was a huge movie, lot of money put behind it. Sometimes we also think of the movie soundtrack, and the movie soundtrack had a lot of variation to it. However, the most notable song was "Kiss by a Rose" by Seal. Kiss from a Rose. Kiss from a Rose.
Kiss from a Rose. All right. Let's see. Gene, I'm going to start with you. What are your first impressions of Chelsea?
I have no impressions because I can't get that song out of my head. Dun, 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 dun.
It's a great song.
It's a great song. No, that's fantastic. So far it's vibing. Blockbuster did exist. It's true. And Batman was a movie. And before it was a movie, it was a TV show, as the poster reveals on my wall. So I want you to know, Chelsea, I know a lot about Batman, so you better be telling the truth.
Okay.
You have a poster, you better.
Yes, indeed.
No
Melissa, what'd you think of Chelsea's story?
Yeah, music. It's it's hitting all the right notes for me. 90s. I love 90s. It's all that in a bag of chips. On the right track so far. I don't have anything that's sticking out yet.
All
If it was the
right.
90s, it could have still been Wise potato chips, but I don't think you can do that anymore.
They still
did
do
they not have
Wise.
those?
They
They
do.
don't?
They do. They do have Wise.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank
It's
goodness.
still a thing.
Sure.
All right, Gina, I'm going to have you come up, and you are going to get your opening round 75-second slot coming up when you
Okay.
take the center box now, and you see the sundial, and you hear the boom. The floor is yours.
Yes. Okay. Eunice Hunton Carter. That's who we're going to be talking about today. She was born in 1899 in Atlanta. And the rose inspired the phrase rise and fall. So I want to tell you her story, which is a rise and fall kind of a story. And it's lovely. So she was born to a prominent family. However, there were race riots in 1906, and she and her family were forced out of Atlanta. And so they made their way to Brooklyn, New York. When they got there, they found their way very slowly, but they were prominent in Atlanta. So when they moved there, they did have means, and they started. They were involved with the YMCA and the NAACP, and her whole family was a very prominent family in Harlem. Eventually, they moved there, and she ended up going to school at Smith College. And when she was there, she got 2 degrees, and she was the very second woman to get a master's degree ever in the United States. The other cool thing is she ended up going to Fordham Law School, and she graduated with a law degree, and she was only the second Black woman to ever get a law degree in the United States. And I will tell you all of the things that she did with that in the next rounds.
All right. Interesting. Melissa, what do you think of Gina's opening round about Eunice Hunton Carter?
Yeah, so I think it sounds good so far. I think that there's, it's by the book so far. I guess if we're going to say what's going on. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, by the book. Chelsea, what do you think of Gina's opening story?
So it's an interesting story so far. I definitely want to do research on her if it is true. However, it was so long ago, and she was like the second woman to get her master's and the second person of color to get a law degree. So I'm like, so she's not the first, so maybe you wouldn't know the name. It might be a little convenient.
Yes, indeed. Good. Very good observation. Very good observation there. All right. So, Adam, if you put the round tracker up, there it is. We see spots number 1 and 2 filled in round number 1, which means we only have one more story for round number 1, and
Indeed.
that would be Melissa. So, Melissa, we're going to put you in the main box here, and when you see the sundial and you hear the boom, you have the floor for your opening 75-second round.
All right, so the year is 1945, and World War II has ended, but the career of this woman has just begun. Her name is Rosalind Franklin, and she was an X-ray crystallographer, which X-ray crystallography is this really cool technique where basically you can determine the shape and the structure of molecules and minerals and all sorts of things by shooting X-rays at things, getting the X-rays back, and then doing some math to figure out where the angles were and why they were the way they were. So she did math for fun. She was super smart. She went to Cambridge, and her work during the war actually led to a better gas mask because she had done X-ray crystallography on coal. So she helped the English Army during World War II. And then she gets to King's College in around 1950. At this time in King's College, the big thing that they were looking to figure out was, what does DNA look like? Because at the time, we didn't know much about DNA. It was just this cool molecule that we started to figure out was in everything. And she ended up playing a really big role in this story.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. All right. Gina, what did you think of Melissa's opening there about Franklin?
I would just like to thank Rosalind for helping us get to CSI. I freaking love that show. So that was really good, Rosalind. Great job. But Crystallography sounds like a fortune teller's, maybe the name of her company or something like that. Like, it doesn't sound real. Many parts of her story sound made up, including the math for fun. She did math for fun phrase. I don't know anybody except myself who does that. So,
Some people
so
do
I don't
math
know.
for fun.
I do.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Weird.
my ex-wife was an accountant. She enjoyed the hell out of math. I can say that.
I love those spreadsheets, man. I'll
Yes,
tell you what.
indeed. Chelsea, what did you think of Melissa's story?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I'm wondering, a woman in science and doing all these new cool cutting edge things, like, really awesome if it's true, but crystallography. I was like, are we cracking geodes open? What's happening? No.
If nothing else, it's fun to say, crystallography, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to change my title on here to crystallographer.
Gina could do that. She has no title.
There you go. There it is. All right. So, Adam, we are now through round number 1 completely, which means it's time for us to go to round number 2.
Let's do it. Round number 2.
So, for round number 2, welcome back to round number 2. We are now going to shorten our stories by 15 seconds. This round, each historian only has 60 seconds to tell us the second portion of their 3-part story. And we're also going to switch up the order. So Chelsea started that round, round number 1. Gina, you're going to go first here. So
Okay.
You and I will switch spots when you get the big square and you see the sundial and you hear the boom. You have 60 seconds for your round 2 story.
Yes, sir. Okay, so Eunice was, when she first started as a lawyer, she got a job at the district attorney's office in New York. So back in those days, it was close to the 1930s, and there was a lot of organized crime in New York. And her boss, the DA, his name was Thomas E. Dewey, was in charge of putting together the racketeering charge that they were doing against the Genovese family, which was led by Lucky Luciano, if you all have ever heard of him. And Lucky Luciano is famous in Italian-American mafia stories because he was the person who talked to all of the families and all of the boroughs and got them to come together in a thing called a commission, so that they basically were all like at peace with each other and they didn't fight with each other, so they could each make more money. So while her attorney that was in charge of the DA, the district attorney's office, was looking into Lucky Luciano, poor Eunice had to take phone calls from the local community with the small complaints and things like that. So her role wasn't very big just yet.
Okay. All right. Melissa, what do you think of the story of Eunice Carter moving forward to the 1930s and being involved with the Genovese family and Thomas Dewey?
Yeah, these names. So it's a lot of like alliterative. What was it? Lucky
Luciano.
Lucky Luciano, Dewey. These are some interesting names. I have questions about the names. And also, you said that taking complaints from the community is not a big thing yet. I would say sometimes that could be a very big thing. So
Fair, yeah.
talk a little bit, just a little.
True indeed. Chelsea, what are your thoughts on Gina's story?
I feel like Lucky Luciano, I'm like, that part has to be real, but we were introduced to a lot of characters in a short amount of time, and I'm like, this is not the direction I thought we were moving in. So I don't know. I don't know if it's like shock value, like, here's some new information.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes.
We will see indeed where it goes. And I wish there were more. I wish the name Eunice would make a big comeback, because if you look at it on paper, it could be pronounced Eunice, and we need more nice people in the world.
We do.
Yes, we do. We're going to move forward in round number 2. We're going to bring Melissa out. And Melissa, you're going to come into the big square here. And when you see the sundial and you hear the boom, you're going to have 60 seconds for your second part of your story. The floor is yours.
Okay, so Rosalind Franklin finds herself at King's College in the 1950s, placed into this giant race for solving what DNA actually looks like. And this sounds like maybe no big thing, but it actually holds the secret to how DNA actually works. So This race included a lot of other prominent scientists at the time, including her boss, Morris Wilkins. And when she first got to the lab, there was this little kerfuffle about who was actually in charge. And so he was on holiday, and when her boss came back, he essentially thought that she was just his assistant, when she was a full-fledged scientist with her own PhD. So there was some tension there. And to make matters worse, there was an American scientist by the name of James Watson who was also trying to solve the structure of DNA and enlisted Rosalind Franklin's help, and she ended up being merciless on his theory.
Ooh. Interesting. This one, this is a fun. There's a lot of fun things to say in Melissa's story. Crystallography and now kerfuffle, a little kerfuffle. Which, just for the record, a big kerfuffle is actually a brouhaha. So, just so you know.
Technically correct.
Technically correct. So, Chelsea, what do you think of Melissa's second round of her story there?
My question is, so we're talking about King's College. We're, over in the UK. There's this American scientist. Where is he over there too? How are they connecting?
Yeah, good questions. Gina, your thoughts on round 2 for Melissa?
The only thought I have is what do you call it when a witch makes a joke?
What do you call it when a witch makes a joke?
A broom ha-ha. Thank you. That's all I was thinking of.
Thank you, Adam. That indeed was trombone worthy.
I was ready for it.
Having said that, I don't know, because the other thought I had, this is how my brain works in case you in the world would like to know. So I was like, James Watson would have been a better choice to invent electricity besides Thomas Edison, because his name was Watson. And then that's what I started thinking of. And so then it just made me realize her story is not true, because I'm not even paying attention to it. It's just not true.
Okay. If it's interesting, I could have used that argument in college. Well, I drifted off, so you must be lying. All right. Well, we have 2 of the 3 dots for round 2 in Night Tracker 9000 filled in. So that leaves 1 story to complete round number 2, and that would be Chelsea. So Chelsea, we're going to put you in the main box here. I'm going to go off to the side. When you see the sundial and you hear the boom, the floor is yours. 60 seconds in this round.
Okay, so the 90s were not just the time of blockbuster movies. We also had some incredible music out in the 90s. So some artists that were topping the charts were Coolio with Gangster's Paradise in 95 when Batman Forever came out, TLC with Creepin' Waterfalls. We had Mariah Carey Fantasy. So it was a huge deal to be approached to be on the Batman Forever soundtrack. So this soundtrack had a lot of different artists on it. There was a song by Method Man, Brandy, U2, The Offspring, The Flaming Lips. So a lot of different genres there. And there was a lot of talk. What should our main song be? So Seal's Kiss from a Rose was absolutely not the first choice. Almost didn't make it onto the soundtrack.
Ooh. Wow. Okay.
Didn't know we had that one in the bank, did we?
No, we did not know we had that in the bank.
That's from the TV show, not the movies.
Okay. Everybody's an expert. All right.
That is correct, Gina. Speaking of Gina, let's get your comments on Chelsea's second round of the story there.
So in my head, every time she said a song name, I was like, all I could think of is where it was in the movie, and then so again, I wasn't paying attention. Therefore, now she is lying. So my theory is not really accurate, I guess.
Okay.
Like my head is just ADD tonight,
So apparently, if Gina's ADD kicks in, that means you're bluffing, and that's the way it works. Melissa, what did you think of Chelsea's story?
There's a part of the TLC song that you brought up that says, "Don't go chasing waterfalls. Stay to the lakes that you're used to." And I feel like by throwing so many 90s songs in this one area, I have to wonder if you're just taking too much off. There's too many songs to distract us from the bluff. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
That could be. That's a popular tactic among our historians on the show historically, is just throwing out so much information that you're overwhelming the audience with facts, and it's like, wow, wait a minute, are they slipping in some things that I am not aware of? So interesting. It could be a tactic.
It's like you're speaking from experience, Chris.
A little bit. I might be. One thing I will say is she mentioned Method Man, and I say Method Man actually looks great. He was just last week featured in the New York Jets are being followed this year by Hard Knocks, the HBO documentary film crew. So Method Man was at the New York Jets opening camp last week, and he looks fantastic. So
I got to check it out.
Yes. So Adam, we are now through round number 2. You know what that means? We're going on to round number 3.
Let's do round number 3.
All right.
Hey, it's got that new round smell.
That new round smell indeed.
Good
I'm glad that's
here.
what that smell is.
Oh.
We are moving on to round number 3, which means this is our concluding round. Each of our historians have 45 seconds to conclude their story and wrap things up. And at the end of this round, we will then find out who each of the historians think is tonight's bluff. And I and Adam may throw in some guesses, although Adam is really the only one that knows the truth.
It's true. I do know.
Bluffing. Because he assigned it, I don't know. But let's get to the stories, shall we? So for 45 seconds now, each of our historians is going to conclude the stories, the third round of their story. And we're going to begin with Melissa. So Melissa, I'm going to put you out on the big square. And when you see the sundial and you hear the boom, you have 45 seconds to conclude your story of Rosalind Franklin.
All right, so tension is a-brewing at the lab, and Watson is getting ready to solve the structure of DNA, ask for Rosalind Franklin's help. And she comes to his office and basically says it's completely wrong and just completely publishes this entire article that says death of DNA as a double helix and humiliates Watson. Watson then gets a hold of Rosalind Franklin's work, uses it to solve the real structure of DNA with his lab partner, Crick, and he ended up getting a Nobel Prize for it. So he got a Nobel Prize. Francis Crick, his lab partner, and Rosalind Franklin's boss got a prize, but Rosalind Franklin never got a Nobel Prize.
Whoa. All right. Gina, what did you think of that story? Rosalind Franklin did not get a Nobel Prize, but she ended up with a crick in her neck. What do you think of that?
That sounds about right? She's a woman, right? Is that in the 50s, right? That's scans.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
unfortunately.
sad.
Unfortunately,
True.
that could be very true. Chelsea, what did you think of Melissa's conclusion?
So we're introduced to like characters at like the 11th hour, and it says that he asked her for her help, but she was working for somebody else at the time. Like, where did that person go? So yeah, we'll see if it all circles back.
Okay, all right. Speaking of circling back, we're going to circle back to you, Chelsea, for your round 3 conclusion. So you and I are going to switch spots here, and when you see the sundial and you hear the boom, you have 45 seconds to conclude your story of the splendor of the 90s.
Okay, so Kiss from a Rose by Seal is a romantic ballad. So the studio was very unsure if this is the representation that they wanted for this movie. They also had ideas about Michael Jackson and Madonna, some pop artists, having some excitement around this movie because they just always have the hits. Another huge contender that almost made it was Bon Jovi, his song Always, because in one of the lines, and I will love you, baby, always, and I'll be there forever. So there's the Batman Forever right there. However, they did go with Seal, and the Bon Jovi one did not even make it on the soundtrack because they didn't want 2 ballads.
Wow.
Dumb.
I'm sorry. We have it. We're going to use it when we're talking about Batman. It's going to happen. Just
Gina,
accept it.
Gina, what do you think of Chelsea's conclusion?
A fun fact, perhaps, but I'm not really sure. What I'm going to reserve my judgment for the last round. But so fun fact is that "Kiss from a Rose" was Seal's first song, and he was driving along the Santa Monica Freeway in a convertible when he heard it come on the radio, and he pulled off in one of those little viewing spots and cried. That's all.
Wow.
It's just a bit of trivia.
Okay, a little trivia there. Melissa,
that's
what do you
nice.
think of Chelsea's conclusion?
So I have questions about how Kiss from a Rose relates to Batman, though, because wasn't the villain, the ice villain? I forget his name, but wasn't that not the villain in this one?
Vanilla was his name.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait, what?
That could have been on the soundtrack. I don't know. I'm not seeing the connection to the song quite yet. But
Okay.
I mean, Vanilla Ice.
yeah, there you go.
I thought she was asking.
All right.
One of the
Adam,
ices of the time.
One of the ice.
I guess.
Wasn't Ice
Yeah,
Cube.
I lost track of the ices.
Wasn't Ice
Ice
Cube,
Cube,
it was not
Ice
Ice Tea. Yeah. All right, Adam, if you look up there on a round tracker 9,000, you see that we only have one circle unfilled.
Only
For
one.
round number 3, only one. So that means that we have Gina to come out and finish her story. So, Gina, we're going to switch spots. Now you're out in the main square. When you see the sundial appear and you hear the boom, you have 45 seconds to wrap up your story.
So Eunice had an idea. She noticed that prostitutes called and they were complaining that they were having trouble with people beating them up and things like that. So they called constantly, and she started investigating the brothels. And so she actually brought down the biggest crime boss in New York City by putting together some listening devices and things like that into the bail bondsmen for the prostitutes, because they were the ones who helped them get the right policemen and the right judges so they would get off, because they were owned by Lucky Luciano. So even though all of the racketeering that they had been looking at this guy for years, they could not get him. This little woman from Atlanta, Georgia, made her way to New York. She became a lawyer, and she took down the biggest mob boss. Now, she did not actually get to try the case because, again, it was the 30s and she is a woman, but she did get the credit. So that actually was very good. And there is a book called Invisible where she is featured because she was behind the scenes and not actually featured in the trial.
Wow.
Very cool, right?
So, yeah, successfully brought down Lucky Luciano. Let's start with Melissa. Melissa, what did you think of Gina's conclusion?
Yeah, there's some tie-ins with Rosalind Brankwood, I feel like, with the credit, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like a
running.
Yeah. So 1930s makes sense. But I guess the thing that stuck out to me that I wrote down was the listening devices. So what were the listening devices like in the 1930s? Like, how many could you have had at the cost of all that? That's what
I don't know. I don't know.
They were-
That
I
certainly
imagine
wasn't in the story.
I imagine them as those big cones that they hold
Yes.
up and just
Yeah.
they decorate them so they fit in with the environment.
I love this.
Chelsea, what do you think of Gina's conclusion?
So she didn't get to try the case, but she's got her law degree. And it sounds like she probably did some illegal activity to bring them down. So I don't know. Was she playing by the rules? What's going on there?
She actually was. Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Well, Adam, we are at the point now where we have heard all 3 of the third round stories. We have heard some questions and answers of all between the historians. It's now time for us to figure out who we think is the bluff, who we think are telling the truth. So I'm going to go down each historian one at a time and ask them who they believe is tonight's bluff. So let's get all of our facts in our minds together. Let's get some accusations brewing in our minds, if you will. And Chelsea, I'm going to start with you, Chelsea. Who do you think is tonight's bluff?
I'm gonna be honest. I really thought it was Gina, but I don't know if you're a really good actress or if I just believe that you believe the story and you're really proud of it and her. So I'm gonna have to say Melissa. All the extra, details and people and connections, but we don't understand how those connections were made. So yeah, so I'm gonna say Melissa.
All right, we have a vote for Melissa. Gina, who do you think is tonight's bluff?
Oh, this is tough because there were little things in each of the stories. So for Chelsea, I was a little bit like off on what I guess is it just that kiss from the rose and it was connected? I guess that's how it was connected, right? Chelsea, is that okay? So she's kind of got like a loose connection, and then Melissa's connection was the DNA thing, and the lady's name had Raza in it. So I guess that's good. And then, but I feel like I studied the DNA thing one time, and that wasn't that lady. So I'm going to go with Melissa also.
Okay, another second vote for Melissa. All right. And Melissa, who do you think is the bluff?
So I'm going to go with Chelsea on this one because there were a lot of songs mentioned here. And a lot of the songs you mentioned, I could see a better connection with Batman than I can this song, to be honest with you. So I find it a little bit beyond belief.
All right. Well, we are going to circle back after we get the big reveal and find out a little bit more about each of our stories. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Adam and find out who indeed is tonight's bluff.
That's right. I'm going to take over because I do have the secret knowledge about who the bluff is. And I will reveal it now. Was your bluff? Was it Chelsea? Was it Melissa? Or was it Gina?
No way.
The reveal comes. And your bluff. This whole time, it was Chelsea.
You little
Almost got away scot-free, but not quite.
Almost. So
There was an
close.
accusation there.
The songs are real, except for the Bon Jovi. That was. All the songs are popular in the 90s.
Yes.
I remember all
No,
those
there's
songs.
songs. Oh, you were saying always. I'm like, what?
You
So
almost
just-
got away from it. You almost got away from it if it wasn't for you kids and that dog. Oh, no, that's the wrong movie.
That's true. So for our audience's benefit, so Chelsea, what was the bluff aspect of your story?
Yeah, the whole Bon Jovi thing, "Kiss from a Rose," was almost not. No, that's not true at all. So yeah, it was there was no controversy of it. Was almost not. It was Bon Jovi, Madonna, Michael Jackson. No, it was always Seal. And we all hear that song, and we all know that song. That's from the
Yeah.
Batman soundtrack.
That's true. Defined my early high school.
You want to hear a funny tie up for Lucky Luciano?
Oh, please.
Absolutely.
So what happened was he was incarcerated and he was in an American jail, and then the World War II happened, and he gave the Americans a little bit of information on Mussolini, so they suspended his sentence and they just told him he had to basically had to be deported, and that was it. He just couldn't come back to the U.S. But in 1962 he got invited back to the U.S. And he actually had a heart attack and he died before he got here, but he was on his way back to sell his story. You want to know who he was selling it to?
Who?
Francis Ford Coppola. No, that part's not true, but the rest of it is.
Oh, come on. Okay.
Bluff is Gina.
Oh, jeez.
I would have been like Francis Ford Coppola. He's like 3 at the time. You know, maybe.
I don't know. No, I don't know who he was meeting with, but he was meeting with an American producer to produce his story, basically, and he died on the way. So
Wow.
he never got back to come back to the United States.
Huh? How about that?
Interesting. And Melissa, you correctly guessed that Chelsea was the bluff. What tipped it off for you? Was
Yeah.
it?
I think it was just the listing of all of the songs. I was like, yep, okay. Song. And then I thought the same thing about the Bon Jovi song. I was like, I thought I was pretty familiar with all of these songs. But Always, it seems plausible that there could be an Always Bon Jovi song, but I just hadn't heard of it.
Oh, there is. No, it was real. Those are real lyrics. It has nothing to do with Batman.
Right.
The association of Batman was the clincher, the linchpin,
Yeah.
as they call it.
Yes, indeed. Well, that is our show. I want to thank Chelsea, Melissa, and Gina, our historians. And I want to
Thank
give
you
a big
very
round of
much,
applause to Adam, our tech extraordinaire. Thank you, Adam.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes. It's been a fun episode. We will be back, as always, with more coming up down the pike. Adam, I'm going to hand it off to you. Take it away until next time.
All right, you got it, Chris. Thanks for hosting. And this has been History Bluffs. You can catch us where you catch your podcasts, and we're here every week live. Tune in, learn.